There are fouls, and then there are message. This wasn't just a hit. It was a statement, vicious, deliberate, and cold. Bill Laimbeer didn't just foul Larry Bird. He dragged him down like prey in front of a roaring Boston garden. And for 1 second, just one, time froze. The crowd stood silent. Then chaos. Rodman ran in. Fans hurled ice. Bird rose, fuming. You could feel it. This was no longer a basketball game. It was war. And in that war, Laimbeer made one fatal mistake. He disrespected a man who let his game do the talking. This is the night Larry Bird didn't speak. He responded. The date was May 24, 1987. The venue, Boston Garden, a cathedral of basketball history. The occasion, Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals, a war between two of the most iconic franchises in NBA history. On one side, the Boston Celtics, champions of the old school, masters of execution, and kings of the East. Led by Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and Dennis Johnson, they were the blueprint of basketball brilliance. Their game was built on intelligence, timing, and grit sharpened by years of playoff bloodshed. On the other side, the Detroit Pistons, a new force rising, younger, meaner, and ready to tear down tradition. They weren't here to play beautiful basketball. They were here to punch you in the mouth and then score. The Bad Boys weren't just a nickname. They were a statement. And no one embodied that more than Bill Laimbeer. Laimbeer was a center by position, but a menace by design. He wasn't just physical. He was surgical in his chaos. Cheap shots, hard fouls, shoves when the refs looked away. A man who used violence like a scalpel and turned pain into a strategy. Opponents hated him. Fans booed him. Even his teammates winced. As head coach Chuck Daly once admitted, Laimbeer made us tougher, but even we had to look away sometimes.
And the 24-second clock goes down, and Bird and Laimbeer go at it. I don't remember Larry Bird getting as angry as I saw him there.
Well, Bird would stand for getting pulled down on a layup, but not on a play like that with the clock running down. And he really got taken down very hard. And of course, Bird is very upset at Laimbeer and has been for a long time.
This was the collision of two dynasties. One ruled with skill, the other with scars. And in the middle of that storm stood Larry Bird, the silent assassin from French Lick. Not a talker, not a flopper, but a cold-blooded killer with a jumper as deadly as a dagger. He didn't beg for calls. He didn't retaliate with fists. He retaliated with wins. But on this night, everything changed. Because Bill Laimbeer wasn't just trying to win the game. He was trying to humiliate the legend. And in doing so, he made the biggest mistake of his career. It was nearing halftime. The Celtics had the ball, the clock was ticking down, and Boston was doing what Boston did best, calmly orchestrating every second of the possession. Larry Bird stood at the low post, in full command. He wasn't in a rush. He never was. He sized up the defense with that quiet stare, faked his man once, maybe twice, and waited for the right moment to strike. And then it happened. Bill Laimbeer came barreling in like a linebacker, not even pretending to play defense. He didn't go for the ball. He didn't try to block the shot. He went straight for Bird's body, grabbed him midair, and yanked him down with full force. It was ugly. It was deliberate. It was a foul that had nothing to do with basketball and everything to do with sending a message. The Garden gasped. For a moment, there was silence, like the breath had been sucked out of the building. And then the boos came. Thunderous. Relentless. Bird lay flat on his back, staring up at the rafters. Not in pain, but in disbelief. Laimbeer had crossed a line. You have to understand something about Larry Bird. He was tough as nails, but he didn't lose his temper. He wasn't a brawler. He was cold, methodical, and surgical. But this was different. He stood up, calmly, picked up the ball, and fired it straight at Laimbeer's chest. The building exploded. Dennis Rodman sprinted in like he'd been waiting for this all night, throwing his own shove. Players swarmed. Fans hurled ice and cups from the stands. The referees completely lost control. For a few chaotic seconds, Boston Garden was no longer hosting a basketball game. It was a battlefield. And in the middle of it all, Larry Bird didn't flinch. Because this wasn't just a foul. This was a declaration. Laimbeer thought he could bully a legend. But what he really did was awaken him. And Larry Bird's response wouldn't come with words or fists. It would come with buckets. Let's get one thing straight. Larry Bird was never the kind of player to lose control. He wasn't soft, but he wasn't a fighter in the traditional sense either. He was built from Indiana steel, cold, calculated, unshakably calm. Sure, he talked trash, some of the best in NBA history, but even that was part of the mental game. Never emotion for emotion's sake. Bird didn't bark to be heard. He barked because he knew he'd bite right after. But what happened after Laimbeer dragged him to the ground wasn't typical Bird. This was something different, something rare. And if you needed proof, just listen to longtime Celtics commentator Dick Stockton, who said it right there on the broadcast. I've never seen Larry Bird react like that. You have to take him to the limit to do that. And Laimbeer took him there. That wasn't a hard foul. It was an ambush, a provocation, a challenge thrown at the feet of one of the most unflappable men to ever step on a basketball court. And for a split second, Bird snapped. He threw the ball. He stood his ground. But then, just as quickly, he recalibrated. He didn't spiral. He didn't swing fists. He didn't ask the refs for help. Because Larry Bird wasn't wired like that. Instead, he took all that rage and turned it into rhythm. You could see it in the way he moved after that. The way the ball left his hands like it was being drawn to the basket by some magnetic force. There was no panic in his eyes, just focus. Laimbeer had tried to shake him, but all he'd done was sharpen him. And in doing so, he made a fatal miscalculation. He tried to rattle a man who didn't just play the game. He mastered it in silence. The second half began with a silence so heavy it felt like the garden itself was holding its breath. No words from Larry Bird, no eye contact, no lingering stare at Laimbeer, just that familiar slow walk to the wing. And then the ball was in his hands. And that's when the real punishment started. Bird didn't retaliate with fists. He retaliated with fundamentals, with footwork, with craft. He didn't need to shove back. He just started scoring. Corner jumper, splash. One dribble pull-up, money. Back to the basket spin, moves into a turnaround fade, nothing but net. He moved like he had something personal to say, but couldn't be bothered to speak it. He let the ball do the talking. And with each possession, the message got louder. He wasn't just scoring. He was surgically dismantling Detroit's defense. One play, he curled off a McHale screen and launched a high-arching three from the left wing, nothing but nylon. On another, he posted up Rodman, spun baseline, and kissed it off the glass before the help defense even blinked. No fistfight, no screaming, just execution. Beautiful. Brutal. Exactly. Every shot was a line in a story Laimbeer never wanted to hear. A story called, "You poked the wrong bear. You wanted my attention?" Bird's game seemed to whisper, "You've got it." And the points piled up. Quietly. Relentlessly. By the end of the third quarter, Bird already had 30-plus points. And the Pistons looked rattled. Their attempts to bully had backfired. Laimbeer was now chasing shadows, and Rodman, no slouch defensively, was being schooled by timing and touch. Bird wasn't done. He was just getting warmed up. The fourth quarter opened like the final act of a heavyweight fight, blow for blow, possession by possession. Detroit clawed their way back, refusing to fold. Isaiah Thomas, with that quicksilver first step, was slicing through Boston's defense. Vinnie Johnson, the microwave, started heating up just like his nickname promised, burying mid-range jumpers and bringing the Pistons back into it. With each possession, the tension in the Garden tightened like a noose. And then, with just a few minutes left, the Pistons tied it up, 99-99. Crunch time. This is where legends separate themselves. And Bird? He was already there, in that zone where time slows down, where every shot feels inevitable. With Dennis Rodman, Detroit's best defender, glued to him, Bird calmly received the ball at the top of the key. One hard dribble left, a left-handed floater high off the glass. Count it. Crowd explodes. Next possession. Same story. Bird catches it near the elbow, Rodman right in his jersey. Bird pump fakes, leans back, fall-away jumper, hand in his face, nothing but net. Then came the putback. Celtics miss. Ball bounces high. Bird, always one step ahead, crashes the boards. A tip-in through traffic, pushing Boston ahead again. He was everywhere, deflecting passes in the lane, boxing out bigger men for rebounds, knocking down ice-cold free throws with machine-like calm. It wasn't just scoring, it was total control. Bird commanded the floor like a general who already saw the ending written.
With 5 seconds to go. Thomas wants to get it in quickly. Does to Laimbeer. Stolen by Bird on the cut to DJ. Yes! Yes, and a foul!
And Laimbeer? He didn't dare foul him now. He didn't trash talk. He didn't even try to rough him up again. He just stood there, watching. Because at that moment, Bill Laimbeer wasn't a rival, he was a witness. Witness to the quiet fury of Larry Bird, and how greatness always answers, not with noise, but with execution. The clock was winding down. Less than a minute remained, and the Celtics clung to a razor-thin 2-point lead. Every possession mattered. Every screen, every switch, every bounce of the ball carried the weight of the series. The Pistons had fought their way back, clawing, scrapping, doing everything they could to survive. And now, the moment was in Isaiah Thomas's hands. He was known for late-game brilliance, for slicing defenses and delivering daggers with fearless precision. But not this time. Boston's defense, anchored by discipline and pride, shut the door. No passing lanes, no easy looks. Isaiah tried to improvise, but the Celtics had seen this dance before. The ball changed hands. And there, like he'd been all night, was Larry Bird. He wasn't forcing it. He didn't need to.
Bird with 35, make it 37.
With 37 points already tallied, Bird had nothing left to prove, only one thing left to finish. As the defense shifted toward him, he calmly swung the ball across the arc to a waiting Danny Ainge. Catch, release, bang, three-pointer. The Garden erupted. That was the kill shot. The moment Detroit felt it slip through their fingers. And then came the unraveling. Detroit imploded down the stretch, rushed passes, botched rotations, sloppy fouls. Isaiah tried to take control, but a lazy pass was intercepted. Boston ran the other way. With victory in sight, Dennis Johnson stepped to the free throw line and calmly knocked down both shots. It was over. Through all of it, every push, every punch, every second, Larry Bird never left the floor. He played all 48 minutes, taking every hit, every foul, and still finding ways to dominate. Not once did he sit, not after being thrown to the floor, not after Laimbeer tried to break him. Because true legends don't fold under pressure. They finished the job. The final buzzer echoed through Boston Garden like a thunderclap. Celtics 122, Pistons 114. A game of blood, sweat, and fire, won not just with skill, but with pride. For the fans, it was a statement. For the team, it was justice. But for Larry Bird, this night meant more. It wasn't just a win on the scoreboard. It was a message etched into memory. Because some games aren't just battles. They're declarations. Boston would go on to face the LA Lakers in the NBA Finals, another chapter in their eternal rivalry, but Game 3 against Detroit lingered like smoke after a fire. The Celtics hadn't just survived the bad boys' physicality, they'd answered it. With poise, with execution, and yes, with their own kind of punishment. Because Boston didn't forget. And Bird? He never forgave. Just 2 games later, in Game 5, a different kind of justice unfolded. Robert Parrish, the quiet warrior, known as the Chief, stepped into the storm. After another dirty play from Laimbeer, Parrish finally snapped. With the refs looking the other way, he clocked Laimbeer across the face with a forearm, a blow that sent the Pistons enforcer stumbling. No call, no whistle, just Boston-style retribution. It was subtle, it was silent, but it was unmistakable. If you come for the head, expect the whole body. Years later, when Bird was asked about that era, about Laimbeer specifically, he didn't hold back. He said, "Rick Mahorn hit you, and you knew it. But Laimbeer hit you and tried to hurt you. That's what made this game different. It wasn't just physical. It wasn't just playoff basketball. It was personal. And Larry Bird made sure Laimbeer never forgot it. This game wasn't just about points or playoff seeding. It was bigger than that. This was about two basketball philosophies colliding at full speed, each refusing to blink. On one side stood the Boston Celtics, a team of precision, timing, and calculated brilliance. They played like chess masters, reading the floor, setting screens like clockwork, turning good shots into great ones. Led by Larry Bird, Boston's identity was discipline, control, and execution. They didn't need to talk. They didn't need to shove. They let the scoreboard speak for them. On the other side were the Detroit Pistons, the rising bad boys. Their basketball was built on chaos. They thrived on disruption, on confrontation. Defense wasn't just about stopping you. It was about rattling you, mentally and physically. They weaponized fouls. They imposed fear. They didn't care if you respected them. They only cared if you felt them. And that's what made this clash so electric. It was surgical control versus controlled violence. Bird didn't throw punches that night, he threw daggers. He didn't run his mouth, he ran the offense. He didn't fight with his fists. He fought with his fundamentals. And Laimbeer, he didn't get ejected. He didn't even get a technical. But he got something worse, he got outclassed. He was shown, on national television, that brute force isn't enough to stop brilliance. He became part of a highlight reel where the message wasn't shouted. It was carved. Because when you disrespect greatness, greatness doesn't yell. It doesn't need to be brawling. It doesn't need revenge tweets or viral moments. It just walks off the court, undefeated, while the fans stand in awe. And if you're lucky, it leaves you with a final look at the scoreboard, because that's where legends write their truth. Larry Bird never needed fists. He didn't swing back. He didn't chase headlines. He didn't flex for the cameras. He had something far more devastating. Fundamentals sharpened by fire. Footwork that could leave defenders guessing. A release so quick and pure it barely needed space. Vision plays 2 passes ahead. And on that night in May of 1987, Bird reminded the world that true toughness isn't loud. It doesn't flail. It doesn't throw elbows out of frustration. It shows up, stay, and wins. While Laimbeer tried to assert dominance through brute force, Bird responded with precision. Not once did he lose himself. Not once did he let chaos pull him off course. Because that's not how legends respond. They don't retaliate. They rise. That Game 3 was more than a victory. It was a message written in mid-range jumpers and putbacks. It was a 48-minute declaration that said, "You can hit me, but you will not break me." So now we ask, was this the night Detroit learned that not everyone could be bullied? That not every legend would fold under pressure or snap when pushed? Or was this the moment that hardened them? That turned the Pistons into something even more dangerous? Because 2 years later, in 1989, Detroit would break through. They'd go on to dominate the league, winning back-to-back championships, finally toppling both Boston and LA. Meanwhile, the Celtics' reign began to flicker. Age, injuries, the grind of greatness catching up. But this moment, Bird versus Laimbeer, never faded. Because it wasn't just a playoff scrap. It was a defining clash between power and poise, between chaos and craft, between brute force and cold-blooded execution. And in that clash, Larry Bird didn't just survive. He wrote his legacy, one shot at a time. That night, it wasn't just a battle. It was forever. If you talk trash, you better back it up. If you take a shot at greatness, you better not miss. Because Larry Bird, he never forgot. On May 24, 1987, Bill Laimbeer tried to send a message with a hard foul. But what he got in return was something far worse. A masterclass in cold, calculated revenge. Larry Bird didn't retaliate with punches. He retaliated with buckets, boards, and brilliance. He played all 48 minutes. He scored 37 points, grabbed 9 rebounds, dished out 7 assists, and walked off the floor without saying a word. Because his game spoke louder than any fist ever could. That night wasn't just about a dirty foul or a scuffle. It was about what happens when you try to bully greatness and learn too late that greatness doesn't break. It burns. Forever etched into playoff lore. Forever remembered by those who watched it live. and forever haunting the man who made the mistake of thinking toughness could outshine legacy. This was the night Larry Bird reminded the world, you don't fight legends with your hands, you fight them with heart. And on that front, Laimbeer never stood a chance. If you like this video, don't forget to press the subscribe button and ring the bell to receive notifications about the latest videos from our channel. Please leave your comments and suggestions below in the comments section, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. This action also contributes to motivating us to work even more diligently. Have a great day.